So any discussion on the minutes? Otherwise, I would look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I shall assume that all are in favor.
Aye.
Have we heard from Matt or is he?
I did not hear from Matt in regards to this meeting.
But we have a quorum, right?
Yes,
Sure. Okay.
we have 2 of the 3 members on the committee. So we have a quorum. We are called to order at 7:05, and we've approved the minutes.
And if I take a few minutes. Or...
If you could, that would be fantastic. In terms of your comment, Kathy, on the passport revenue, I'm happy to report that we just had our busiest day ever for passport revenue. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, a lot of people are asking about passports, and
Yeah.
also people like my own daughter is looking to renew hers. That's come down. Some people don't have any. What kind of turnaround time are you getting for it at the moment?
Well, there's a big gap right now between what the State Department is asking us to tell everybody and what we're actually hearing from folks.
Yeah.
What they're asking us to tell everybody is that it's 12 to 18 weeks for routine service. What we've actually heard from folks is that it can be anywhere from 4 up to 9 weeks. But it's definitely, we haven't heard from anybody anything as long as the 12 to 18. I think that might partly be because generally the mailing, the postal service in the Chicago area here has been pretty solid.
Yeah.
I think the longer wait times, I think a big part of that has been that there's been some real lag in some parts of the country with the postal service, which we're not experiencing here. We can see from our mailings that stuff is getting there inside a week. So, but
you can expedite it as well here. As well.
Yeah. But they're still telling us that that's taking 6 to 12 weeks.
Yeah.
So, which is big wait times. The way that it's usually set up is that you have very clear options depending on how soon you're going to travel. 2 to 4 weeks, you do the expedited. 4 to 6, that's your routine. Under 2 weeks, you need to go to a passport agency. Actually go down into Chicago to the State Department and apply in person. But with the way that it's currently set up, there's such big gaps between the times, particularly on the lower end of that they still don't want to have, because they're so overbooked, don't have somebody in unless they're traveling in under 2 weeks. But we've had folks that have been coming in, and like, well, I'm traveling in a month, but you're telling me it's going to take 6 weeks or more, even if I expedite. But yet I have to wait, just sit around and wait a month before the State Department will see me downtown, and hope that, because it's a bit of a lottery getting in, that I'm able to do that.
So do we do renewals here as well?
We do not, chiefly because we're not allowed to. The renewal system is supposed to be entirely through the mail, so that's one of the big no-nos that they do not want us engaging in, is doing anything with those renewals.
So when we had the biggest passport day, what is that? That number of passports or?
Number of passport applications today was 12.
Wow, that's a lot.
Right.
So that's not relying on my brain for math at the end of the day, that's a solid $420.
420?
420.
Oh, is that our?
Yep, that's ours.
What we earn.
Yep.
Wow.
Oh, that's what we earn. I was
Yep.
going to say the fees will be a lot more than the 420.
Oh, yeah. No, that's fees to the State Department. That would have been probably somewhere north of $5,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, not that much. It would have been like close to 1,000. But
Is there an agenda?
I had not printed them out.
This is the one.
Just send it to me, because it'll help me do the minutes.
Okay, sounds good. I've got it up on the screen here as well for reference, but I will send you the doc so that you can have that. Or would the PDF be better? I keep forgetting you're a Mac user.
Yes.
I'll send you the PDF then. Since that translates well across systems. So the discussion for this evening is the cost of the project manager and whether that should be carried by the foundation using the donation that was received, or whether that should be covered by the library. So, Kathy, I know you have some thoughts on that. I've done some calculations as well, so I'll start us off with a couple numbers. So I took a look back on what we had paid for a project manager for the last project to kind of get a ballpark as far as what that looked like, and follow that up with some research. So from what I've read, project managers can be expected to cost somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 10% of the project. And that percentage goes down the more expensive the project is, because there's cost savings based off of the scale of the project. So if you're talking millions of dollars, you're probably looking towards 5, probably looking more towards the 10 when you get under $1 million. And what I found with past experience very much fit with that. Justin Pathman, who was the project manager in 2011, was paid $24,990. So that
That was actually paid to
him.
To him or to,
Oh, to his construction firm.
Yeah.
At the time, it was Pathman Construction.
okay, all right.
So he was with a smaller firm than he is with now.
Right. So
So
that was the roofing project.
yeah. Oh no, that was the renovation.
Oh, okay. Oh, 2011, I'm sorry.
Yeah, in 2011. So for that, that was just over 9%, based off of the final expenses paid of that project. So looking at a project then, if we consider 5,000 to 70,000, we still haven't gotten a hard final number on that, and probably won't for a bit yet. You know, we can expect then to see somewhere in the neighborhood of, you know, on the very low end, which we probably would not see 2,500, but more like 5,000 to 7,000. I do think that we're likely to see a fairly modest charge for this initial project. The reason being that we've been pretty straightforward, pretty open-handed with the project managers who have come in and talked to us over the past 2 weeks. In that, you know, this is a small project, it's an initial project. Here's what we have going on. We are anticipating that this is in part an opportunity for us to form a good working relationship with a project manager who will start in at the ground level, familiar with everything that we're working on, and be able to guide us through efficiently and make sure that everything fits together from one project to the next. So, the fellows that I talked to then were fairly straightforward then, in that, okay, it's good to know that, because knowing that that's how it's going to fit together will impact how we'll, you know, approach that, the information that we'll provide and the quote that we'll get you. So I would guess probably something more middle of the road, something say 3,000 to 5,000, depending on a variety of factors. So the way that the process as far as hiring a professional is set up means that we don't have that number yet. Because going through with, skipping the bid process and going with the alternate process that Joe encouraged us to pursue, meant that the focus is on the qualifications. So that document that we posted, and something that I kind of kept forgetting because I'm so used to posting requests for bids, is that document was all concerned with, tell us what your qualifications are, and then we'll sit down with the group that we are most satisfied with the qualifications of and negotiate a contract. And then if we're not satisfied with our ability to negotiate a contract that we like with that group, then we'll go to the next.
And are you getting written responses yet?
Yes, I have 3.
Are those responses including a fee?
They do not.
Okay.
No.
Would you expect the project management to come out of the people who are going to get the successful bid, or would that be someone else that you're looking at to manage the?
I think the project manager will be in this group.
Yeah.
They, there hasn't been one yet where I've looked at it and thought, Kathy and Bill, I think you've probably been around long enough to as well to know that you do an open bid process, and sometimes there's bidders that come through and it's kind of, it make you feel a little bit on the uneasy side. But I think Joe and Sean steered us very well here, and all 3 of them seem very solid.
Have we got any unsolicited responses?
We have not.
Okay.
I did have somebody that contacted me just at the end of last week that I'm trying to connect with, who expressed interest in knowing more about what we were doing. So if they want to submit, then more power to them. We have the flexibility to continue to accept.
And this is going until the August. Do we have a date in there?
Officially, it closed at 6 o'clock today.
That's right, that was the night,
Yeah. But we, as the accepting agency, we put right into the bid that we reserve the right to be flexible with the rules if we felt it was to the benefit of the process. So if we wanted to accept another bid, and I don't see how, as long as it wasn't out of left field after we'd already begun the interview process, then if you're going to get it to us within the next few days or the next week, then.
So did you see 3 as of today?
3, yep. From Shales McNutt, from Justin with Rethink, and the 3rd from WB Olson.
And Justin's last name again is
Pathman.
P-A-T-H.
P-A-T-H-M-A-N-N, just 1 N. I keep trying to give him 2 N's and then have to remind myself that it's just 1. Path and Man. There was a 4th party that was suggested by Sean and Joe, but they opted not to bid because they felt that the scale of the project was not in their wheelhouse, which is fine.
Did all the bids come in close, or discrepancy?
Well, we don't have numbers yet.
Okay.
Just a list of qualifications.
Oh, I see.
So I didn't catch this myself. So we're getting qualifications, and
Yep.
based on those, we will interview.
Yep.
And that leads us to asking for a bid, or what?
Yes.
Okay. So, but the interview process is still to choose a project manager.
Yes.
All right.
So the way that the process works, when you're selecting a professional, that clause within Illinois bid law is that you post for their qualifications.
Okay.
And then you select based off of that and then negotiate the price, with the option then of deciding that, if you can't agree on a contract, then talk to one of the others. But that kind of turns it around a little bit, because usually with the bid process is the Illinois state law lays it out. You straight up, tell us who you are and then tell us what it would cost straight away. And then it's the price that's the bottom line generally as far as selection.
So each of these three
Mhm.
would go out and solicit an organization or a company to come in and do the renovation, or do their companies already have a staff to do that?
We would handle, with the help of Engberg Anderson,
Okay,
the actual posting of the bid requests for the various companies to do the various work.
okay,
And then that would be, what we would be doing. What the project managers do is they oversee the work.
yeah,
So they keep tabs on the folks that come in, make sure that they're coordinating appropriately, make sure that they're not disrupting use of the library, and basically oversee that.
got it, okay. So yeah, they're basically your chief, your contractor to
Yeah.
handle all the other contractors.
And then,
Okay.
yeah, and then the Engberg Anderson folks would be working with that project manager. They would be the eyes here, riding herd on people doing the work, and coordinating then with Joe and Sean at Engberg Anderson, on any questions as far as, where things should go, whether things are being done correctly, how they wanted things to end up.
Now, isn't Shane McNutt the construction company?
Yes, they also do project management though too.
Okay, so is it conceivable that you could have a project manager who also works for the company that's doing construction?
That's kind of what I was thinking.
I suppose that's possible, yeah.
So it would all be rolled into one
Yeah.
cost coming into.
That's a possibility, yeah. I mean, not all the companies that we're talking to do all the things, but you are right. That's a good observation that, my understanding is Shell's McDuff does construction and project
Yeah,
management.
well,
So,
I know Joe is always spoken very highly of Shane McNutt as well.
Yeah.
And they did estimating for us early on in the state study.
yes. Mhm.
Because if there's work that they couldn't do, they could probably handle the contractors to come in
Right.
around their project, which may be more efficient if they're the ones that do the majority of the work. They'll have everything sequenced. Instead of
That's
going to
true.
a third party.
You're not doing good work, and not only can I get a hold of your boss,
Right, exactly, yeah.
they're in the office next to mine. So I just need to lean around, knock on their door.
Right.
No, Shells McNutt has been, I think we had a representative from them actually out to talk about the numbers that they provided initially, in fact. The interactions we've had there have been favorable. Justin, positive experience last time he was here as project manager. And interactions would continue to be positive. With WB Olson, actually, the person that came out was a Scott Larson. Who came out to do the site visit and talk to us. And Scott actually is a former Lake Bluffer and was really excited about the prospect of working here. So that was interesting as well. So, who knows? Former patron, now experienced project manager. So the world turns. But
I don't mean to distract you, but.
Yeah.
Are you hearing a beeping?
Oh yeah.
We don't have like a sub pump that's bubbling up right.
We have a sump pump that is having some struggles. And I'm actually midway through texting Lindy about that. We have sump pump redundancy. So the beeping is basically just letting me know that something has happened that the secondary sump pump had to kick in.
Okay.
I'm guessing that that's probably that there has been so much water that came down this afternoon that they both kicked in because the water came up too fast for the primary to deal with on its own. Usually that's the case. But anytime that alarm goes off, we always make sure to check and make sure that it isn't a failure on the part of the primary, because you don't want to find out belatedly that you have a sump pump that died.
I'm sorry about that.
No, that's a good question. I had it in my mind that I should mention that beeping at the start of the meeting and it escaped me. So, good ears. Okay, so the question then, really before the committee is a recommendation as far as whether the library or the foundation with the funds that have been donated should carry that particular cost. The cost of construction and doing the project of materials and labor obviously are pretty clearly, attached to the donation, which rests with the foundation. But with the cost of the project manager, that's kind of an operational expense of making the project happen. And additionally, there's also the catch there as well of the library wanting to maintain maximum control over the process. And that being a bit easier to do if it's library general funds versus a donation, because our funds aren't tied to any particular person. I don't foresee this particular donor making a fuss out of procedure and trying to pull those strings. However, I do acknowledge that in terms of looking at what we would want to do, that it probably is best practice to have the operational expenses, when possible, from the library's general funds, so that we don't end up with a situation where someone might say to us, well, I don't like so-and-so, or so-and-so, or how things are being done in terms of the management of this, you're using my money. So
if we were going to use from the library, then what areas could we get it from to do it? So,
and that is where the budget documents come in.
Yeah.
So, having taken a look over what we've got in terms of available funds, we do have built in 1,500 in contingency and another 1,000 in miscellaneous expenses. So those are funds that we could move towards this, which I think will get us pretty close to the total that we would need for this expense. Looking at the budget overall, as it's, yes.
1,500 is contingency and 1,000 is
Miscellaneous expenses.
okay.
Here, I can bring the budget up on the screen, in fact, which will be more visible if I turn off the light. And then I highlight where I'm looking. So scrolling down. So miscellaneous expenses, right there, there's 1,000, and then 1,500 in contingency. I do also see some good opportunities shaping up for us to gain some efficiencies over what we had initially budgeted for. One of those I think we already put our finger on, which is the passport revenue. Now, we hadn't really known back in February, when we were looking to approve a budget, exactly what kind of environment we were going to have when the passport issuance became a thing again, or even necessarily when that would take place. What we've experienced thus far is that in just May and June, we had already taken in $1,643, which is getting close to 25% of the 7,000 that we budgeted for in a sixth of the year. So well ahead of where we had anticipated being, and much closer to being on track to be around $10,000, which is what we had in the happy days of early 2020 budgeted for what we thought we were going to get the next year. So I think that's a number we can be cautiously optimistic on. We've got some other areas where we're running ahead as well.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Has the license renewal thing started, or is it still stalled?
That is still in the process of getting set up. I've got the materials for it now. I just need to get us coordinated with the sticker printer and get the procedure all worked out on the desk.
It's functional from the state point of view?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good job. That's great.
Okay, and we do also have some other places that were looking good. Another would be, where are you? Utilities. So we had switched over on out who we were dealing with in terms of phone service. And we were still in the process of sorting out that transition, when the budget was approved. So I was a bit cautious in putting down the numbers there, but it does look like that should be a pretty not insubstantial cost savings there as well that will let us run under expenses. Right now, after the first 2 months, we were running at all utilities, all told, $1,400, which was 10%. So
10%
savings. 10% of the expended, and
10%.
And the the 16 or 17% after 2 months would be about par, what we would expect to see percentage-wise. And the utilities is one of the lines that tends to be not completely, but somewhat predictable month to month, because it's things like phone and internet, which tend to have a little bit more reliability versus, say, building and ground supplies, which is up and down all over the place because a lot of it is salt for the sidewalks and things like that.
Would your utilities also have the heat and electric and stuff like that in there, or do you have that as a separate line item? No?
It does not.
Okay. Okay.
And the reason is because we don't pay for that.
Okay.
Okay. And that's because we're a component unit of the village. So it's what the village refers to as their franchise. Basically, in order to allow the company's electric and gas to run pipes and cables all up and down in the right of way owned by the village, the village has negotiated that they don't have to pay for that service.
Okay, so yeah, I definitely agree that there's a lot of predictability in there.
Yeah.
You've got savings utilities, you've got passports, you've got the miscellaneous, and you've got the contingency.
So
all of those.
Yeah. So the summary then is that looking through the budget right now, for question number one, could the library cover the expense of the project manager? Answer is yes. The question then is, what would the library like to do? Would this be a library expense or would this be a foundation expense? And then I turn that over as far as a discussion to the both of you. Kathy, I know that you wanted to get this on the agenda, so I believe you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm torn as a member of the foundation and as the president of the board. And so my primary concern is the budget of the library. But I think Eric's made a very good case for managing what is not going to be a huge expense this go around. We should think ahead what it is going to be a precedent for a longer ongoing project and how that would, is this a binding decision or is that going to be negotiated as time goes on? You've also made a very good argument for the good reason for the library to control the project. Because if we're successful with our fundraising and our board grows and we have influential people in town giving money, who do we want to be calling the final shots on the project of the library? And it probably should be the library. And so a good way to control that and to communicate that partnership would be having the project manager work directly with the library. So that's a good argument. I hadn't thought about that. So my real concern is looking ahead for this fiscal year, can we, in the library, afford to make this meet this expense without setting ourselves in any kind of rear? It looks as though we can. I have no reason to believe, even with the current total disarray of the COVID world, that we're not going to continue to keep these numbers going successfully, considering the community that we're in and the nature of things. I think we're in good shape. In our conversations, it came up in B&G, and it was right away, well, why does B&G recommend to the board that we pay for this? I kind of stopped that. I said, this really is a finance decision. It's not a building and grounds committee. And then it is overall a board decision. So I really would want you to weigh in and give your recommendation. And then my thinking is that this committee would go to the board with another recommendation so that everyone is voicing their opinion and participating.
I mean, looking at the numbers, and there was one other area, Eric, I've got my budget. On one of the major projects, you know, the computers, and we've got a building here, which was the car park.
Yes,
Yeah, so of that, sorry, I'm not sure on the card. This is the purple's the budget, and the green is what's been spent.
oh, this is what was expended last fiscal year.
Last fiscal year. So this is the budget. So of the 20 grand that's there, was that put aside for the parking lot, and we did that last year? Because it was right around that time, because you had the electrical work had to be done on the curbs, on those light things.
That's a good question.
So
my recollection on that was that some of the work did end up
going into last year.
Yeah.
So I think there's money still aside there that we haven't. But even if that wasn't the case, just from the numbers there with passports, there's 7 grand there. And even if you said maybe we take, you know, we could safely assume half of that. That then falls into that 2 to 5 grand there. So puts you in at 3.5 on that budget of 2 to 5 for this particular project. So I would say based on the numbers that the library could do this, and based on what you've come up with, and I do like the idea that the library has control of the project, as opposed to maybe the contractor who's going to have their own.
Or the foundation who says, you know, we really want the whole library to be painted purple or something.
Yes.
Which I don't see happening, but down the road, nobody knows what's going to happen. So it's a good precedent, I think, to take.
Agreed. I do think it might be more of a challenge with some of those larger projects, but I think it's worth aiming for.
Yeah. But even a cooperation of some kind is, we've set the groundwork for that.
That's very true. You know, that is a very good way to look at that. That expense doesn't even in the future need to be necessarily 100%, it could end up being 50-50. Yeah.
And the license fees are not in the budget this
Um,
year, or
they
they're in the
are,
last part?
But they are a pretty small number. They're
Oh,
factored
okay.
in just as the 2,000.
Oh, okay.
I don't think that's all that small, because they've never done it before. I mean, it's a great way to start, so.
It is. It's just a matter of getting it up and going. And there's always a certain amount of variables, particularly right now,
Well, I
with
would
getting
say,
something up and going.
I'd say if anybody who's trying to renew their place up in Waukegan,
Yeah.
or Deerfield, they will come running here.
No, the word is definitely out
Yeah.
that if you can avoid the DMV, it is worth avoiding.
Yeah, if the state would let you guys set up those new IDs, which they're just failing at terribly.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
All you do is log in with all, they can't manage to get through those files of dated information and social security numbers and all that. It's just befuddling to them. Your staff can do that in a link, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't be doing the real IDs. What we would be doing would be like more ordinary stuff like a license renewal, license plate renewal. But, still, the real IDs are what's very much making it a challenge to get into the DMV for anything.
Right. Okay, could you backtrack one real quick in the
Absolutely.
utility issue? Are you estimating $1,400 available, or I kind of lost track of?
Oh, okay.
You had,
So what we expended through May and June was that just over 1,400.
okay.
That's the 1,400 number. The reason why that's noteworthy is that tends to be a fairly reliable month-to-month expense for the most part. As Bill noted, it doesn't include electric or gas,
Right.
Which can fluctuate a lot with the seasons. We're just looking at sewer, the internet and phones as being the primary drivers there. Those tend to be pretty predictable outside of the seasons.
So if you had that, if you were looking at 700, that would put you at 1,400 for 2 months would put you at 8,400.
Yeah.
You've got 14,000 there, so there's another
Yeah.
5,600. That's a bit of a cushion.
Sure.
And again, that gives us nearly 13,000 of. If we were able to take everything, and let's assume that we're going to see some fluctuations, and maybe in some of the other things that we might need during the year. So
yeah,
it looks like there'll be available. It's like you said, if the budget falls between 2 and 5, I think the library will be able to.
Yeah.
We should be able to do that. How long do you think the project's going to take once it starts? Is it a 2 month? 3
Well,
months?
1 to 2, I would.
Well, I'm trying to think, because I've got it on my desk, I jotted it down and put it on my desk.
Oh,
And
yes.
Joe set it up, there's a lot of preliminary stuff. When he
Okay.
actually was talking about construction, he was talking about February, March. So, but there's a lot of stuff we should do ahead of time, but he was also aiming at something that we could plug into that. That's an advantageous time for a lot of contractors to get a good price because it's indoors.
Yeah.
So hopefully, that's kind of a benchmark.
Trying to see if I can find that. Here we go. I think this is it. Here we go. This was the preliminary schedule.
So we're looking behind schedule already.
Yeah. Well, Joe's initial schedule was pretty ambitious.
Right. And if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, the project manager would pretty much begin at this, he would pretty much oversee this, right, for us, gathering information, presenting it to us, explaining it to us.
Well, that would, in terms of the planning of the project itself, that would fall on Engberg Anderson,
Okay.
which would be another expense that we would that we'll need to take a look at, because that's the design and the setup. But then when we get into looking at the information on bidding, and the submittals, that's where we would start getting our project manager really involved. Because we would, want to get their thoughts as far as, these are the folks we have bids from, do you know anything about these companies? Tap into that expertise there, having worked with a lot more construction firms than we have. And then going from there as far as getting the companies that we then select set up and scheduled, and making sure they have everything they need and that they're not tripping over each other when they're out here. So it sounds like then that,
Bill, it's up to you, is that right?
Yeah, no, I'm good with us doing it through the library.
okay,
Yeah, so the numbers are there to support it.
Yeah.
Unless the bid comes in, over 10 grand or
Sure.
something like that.
Yeah. and that'll come up as something that, we're negotiating, and that'll go before the board for approval, is my anticipation. So that being the case, there'll be plenty of opportunity to, stop and say, well, let's talk about this some more.
Yeah, and actually, we didn't talk about that because these interviews, we hope to get started, I think, in the next 2 weeks.
Yes.
So then, if we have 3 or 4 project managers to work from, and then the building and grounds makes a recommendation to kind of keep us on schedule, hiring that person would actually happen before the September meeting. So we could meet again and then have some kind of communication with the board, or we could make a recommendation to the board to approve a range of dollars with Eric to approve hiring this person.
Yeah.
And if we go over that range, well, then we have to revisit it.
That makes sense.
But we could work with what we think is a feasible range of dollars. Work within that.
Okay. I can definitely get that on the agenda for the next board meeting, since that would be a board discussion and decision to set that range.
Okay, great.
Ahead of that. So thinking that the 2 to 5 sounds, does that feel
That's
comfortable range?
That's a range. I figured, you've got a buffer of a potential of 11, and you use half of that. And that's assuming, the passports, everything sort of keeps on the same level. And again, in that one project, if there's money in that exterior project, we haven't touched that yet.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so,
Sounds good.
yeah.
So would you like me to make a motion? Or do you want to phrase it for us?
To recommend to the library board that the library cover the expense of a project manager, should that expense fall between $2,000 and $5,000. With Building and Grounds Committee to make recommendation on the
So within range of, did you say 2 to 5,000?
2,000 to 5,000.
Okay.
With the Building and Grounds Committee to make the recommendation as to the, make the selection of the desired firm. Not sure what the right verbiage is actually on that one.
So
Usually it's just lowest bidder.
Right, and it might be somewhere in the middle. Somewhere
Yeah.
you could feel for it, but knowing that you can work within that range.
So to recommend to the library board that the library cover the cost of the project manager within a range of $2,000 to $5,000, based on building and grounds recommendation of a selected candidate of project manager.
That sounds fantastic.
Okay. Oh, so I made that motion.
And I'll second.
All
So
in
you don't have to
favor?
read it again,
Doesn't do
yeah?
anything good, doesn't do anything with it.
Oh, let me think about it, no, that's like,
All right. Motion carries. Boy, I should turn those lights back on, huh? Okay, that takes us to the any and all other business that can be brought before the committee.
No other business.
If there is no other business to be brought before the committee, then I would look for a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
All in favor?
I,
I
Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned at 7:54 PM.